California is in the midst of a recall election because the people of California are fed up with Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom. Now, the polling shows that it's neck and neck. Recent polling shows that Newsom may have an advantage and may narrowly escape being recalled. But if he is recalled, Larry Elder is likely to become the governor. There's a lot of problems in California, and many, even on the left, have said it's a failed state for a variety of reasons. I think it's fair to say that the state is collapsing. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to completely dissolve, fall apart, and cease to function. It just means it is on its current track very, very bad. And if something isn't done, and eventually at some point it just will cease to function. But I don't mean to say like it's the apocalypse. What I mean is crime is skyrocketing. Homelessness is skyrocketing. There's human waste in the street. A violence prevention city official was mugged on TV a few months ago. I mean, it's bad. And this is no fault, to a certain degree, no fault to the leadership there, but there are droughts and there are fires. Certainly, they do bear certain responsibility for the emergency response and how they're handling water reservoirs and things like that. I'm not going to blame politicians necessarily for natural disasters, but those are factors in the continued decay of the state. And now we have one of the most brilliant ideas I've ever heard. Note the sarcasm. San Francisco rolls out program to pay people $300 a month not to shoot each other in a bid to curb gun violence in woke city where crime is basically legal. Yes, we've seen all the videos where the people are going into Walgreens and Target whatever and just stealing whatever they want. It's so bad that the other day we were joking about a sketch where you have you have two guys trying to come up with a get-rich-quick scheme, and they're always doing these crazy shenanigans, and then they see a news report about how police don't prosecute shoplifters in San Francisco, and they go, yeah, and then that's their get-rich-quick scheme. It's basically free stuff in California because nobody will do anything about it. Now their idea is, hey, how about we pay criminals? Something many on the left have floated before. This idea that if we're going to spend 30 grand to incarcerate someone, why don't we just pay them 20 grand not to commit the crimes? It sounds like a good idea if you're a child, because how do you know someone's a criminal unless they commit a crime in the first place? In which case, what would have to happen is someone would have to commit a crime. Then you'd say, okay, you've committed a crime. Here's what we'll do. We're going to give you 20 grand if you don't commit any crimes for the rest of the year in installments every month for every crime you don't commit. What? It makes no sense. Basically, you're telling people go commit a crime and then enroll in this program. It doesn't make sense. This is why I'm saying California is collapsing, because their solutions are absurd. And when they even attempt to have a solution, it's not really even a solution, but a Band-Aid. I mean, take a look at San Francisco with their human waste problem in the streets. So they create a poop patrol to go around, a poop department. You think I'm joking? San Francisco has a poo department. You know, I got a fire department, a police department in my county. Your city probably has a sheriff's department or a police department or a fire department or EMS. San Francisco has a public poo department to go out to clean this up. It's not a joke. Paying criminals won't solve the problem. So let's take a look at what's going on with this specific program. Now, I want to show you policy failures that are escalating in California. And then we'll talk about this recall effort, which I think is warranted. And my friends in California, vote yes on recall. And you should vote for Larry Elder, not because I agree with Larry Elder in a lot of policy positions, but that I think you vote for the Democrats and you will get dogmatic cultists who are pandering to the crowd for whatever they want to hear, and they solve no problems. More of the same. Larry Elder will be an outsider in California politics. Again, not that I agree with his policy ideas. He won't be able to implement most of them, but he will be able to veto and challenge Democrat supermajority, which is failing this state. The best I can say is Larry Elder shakes things up a little bit, and maybe that's what California needs. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com, become a member, as I always say, to support our journalists who are doing a ton of work. We just hired another journalist. We're going to be hiring more because that, to me, is the most important thing that money can buy. Real, honest reporting, trying to inform you of the world so that you can make your decisions. You can make the decisions you need to make. Not because we're going to tell you things you have to believe or frame things. Though I admit, I think we have our bias based on what we focus on. We try to present the stories factually. You'll also get an ad-free experience and access to members-only content, which is, for now, Timcast IRL member segments, which can be up to an hour long. But we have a couple new shows. We're doing one called The Green Room, where we're going to be just showing the crew hanging out in the green room as our guests come in. So it's off the cuff. Will probably only be for 10 or 15 minutes, but just more bonus content for you. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Let's read the story from the Daily Mail. San Francisco rolls out program to pay people $300 a month not to shoot each other in a bid to curb gun violence in woke city where crime is basically legal. They say the woke scheme to curb soaring violent crime is set to begin in October, offering gift cards as an incentive for prospective criminals to lay down their guns. I don't think it's fair to call this a woke program. I think it's just progressive garbage. Called the Dream Keeper Fellowship, the pilot program will kick off with 10 individuals who are deemed at high risk of committing a shooting or being shot, paying them $300 to act as public safety ambassadors. Sweeteners could kick the monthly payments up to $500 if they meet certain benchmarks, such as seeking a job or maintaining parole appointments. I love this idea because I'm wondering how they go about doing this. Is it going to be that there's someone who does shoot someone, and then instead of going to jail, they'll say, whoop, 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 if you don't do it again, we'll give you $300 a month? Or are they going to show up to a random person's house and be like, based on your lack of education and impoverished living standards, we assume you're going to shoot somebody, so here's money not to do it? Can you imagine? Because come on, it's going to be one of the two, isn't it? I don't know how they expect to determine who is at high risk of shooting someone. It's amazing, isn't it? They say it comes as violent crime skyrockets in many cities, including San Francisco, where gun crimes are up 100% so far this year compared to the prior year. San Francisco Mayor London Breed, a Democrat, insisted in an interview that the generous program is not simply cash for criminals. These folks do not have any sort of income. And so part of what we're trying to do is make sure that money is not a barrier to turning your life around. I love this idea. You know, it's like we could do universal basic income, right? There are a lot of hardworking people struggling to get by. So here's some free money. Use that to pay your bills. Instead, they're like, we're not going to do that. We're going to give the money to the worst, like the people committing crimes. Amazing. But we want them to turn their lives around. So what do you think is going to happen when hardworking people who can't make ends meet see criminals getting paid and are like, yo, I work every day. I work hard, my fingers to the bone, so that I'm honest. So that I don't I'm not committing crimes. I'm working hard to, get a job at Starbucks, McDonald's, or a factory or something. And then you watch criminals get free money. You're going to be like, I'm in the wrong line of work. Might as well just be a criminal, right? It's a ridiculous proposition. Much like when the left often says, why don't we just put homeless people in empty homes? As if homeless people are homeless simply because they don't want to work. They're homeless people who, or who can't, or who are struggling. I would say in my experience working with homeless shelters, there is a small percentage that are homeless through no fault of their own, through bad circumstances, that desperately want to get jobs and recover. And there are a lot of homeless people who are homeless because of some choice or mental illness. And you can't just put them in a home and expect the home to be maintained. Look, we had a major storm just roll through the East Coast. And I just found out at the neighborhood we were in before, massive damage. Trees fell down. Roads are shut down. They can't even get emergency crews in. Power's out in some areas. And I'm like, wow, what are you going to do? You're going to put a homeless person at the house and then when the tree falls down and smashes into it, it just sits there? Or someone's going to have to go and fix it. Who's that going to be? People need to maintain homes. And you can't just put a homeless person in a home and think the problem's solved. It's childish thinking, as is this. City officials claim the controversial pilot scheme is based on the theory that criminals' bleak financial circumstances cause them to carry out violent crimes. The program is run by the Human Rights Commission and Office of Economic and Workforce Development and is funded through the Dream Keeper Initiative, a city program that works to redirect funding into communities of color. So you know what? Here we go. You mean that they have a program specifically targeting non-white communities, and you're going to go there, accuse these people of having high risk of shooting each other based on their race, and then give them money. This is the most offensive and one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. Breed said, "We're looking for ways to provide incentives to make sure that they are actively engaged in seeing their parole and probation officers." She added, "The data shows that when you provide people with opportunities that could change somebody's life. Giving someone money isn't an opportunity. When you feed a man a fish, you feed him for a day. When you teach a man to fish, you feed him for the rest of his life. This is just hurting, in my opinion. Cheryl Davis, the executive director of the Human Rights Commission, also asserts that there is more to the program than what some might take at face value. She said to Fox News, "It's not necessarily as cut and dry as folks may think. It's not as transactional as here's a few dollars so that you don't do something bad. But it really is about how you help us improve public safety in the neighborhood. As you become better, your community benefits from that." That's right. They're hiring criminals to be public safety liaisons. I'm not sure $300 is going to cut it. Is $300 enough for your insurance, your medication, to pay for rent, to pay for your food? No. So even if you give them $300 or $500 if they get jobs, they're still going to be like, yo, I can make more money and make money faster just taking it from people. So why do this? You'd have to pay them a lot more. But then the problem is the more you pay, the more people are like, yo, why am I working $15 an hour for this job when I can get money for free? Maybe that was their idea. Like, okay, we got to keep the money low enough so that they don't, they don't quit their jobs and start committing crimes, but enough to incentivize them not to commit crimes, which probably isn't true because criminals probably make more money than a lot of jobs in California. So stupid idea. And herein lies the greater issue. Look at this story from June 29th. This one is truly something special. Robbery attempt disrupts anti-violence officials interview. Talk about irony. Robbers held up a television crew, a news crew, at gunpoint Monday in Oakland as they were interviewing the city's director of violence prevention, authorities say. The crime outside City Hall was just hours after the police chief slammed a move to cut the department's budget by $18 million and redirect the funds in an effort to support alternatives to law enforcement. Amazing. They defund the police. They start paying criminals, and the dude in charge, the anti-violence official for the city, this is Guillermo Cepedez, head of the city's Department of Violence Prevention, was mugged on live TV after the police had just said, don't defund us. All right. I'll tell you this. In places like New York, defund them for all I care. In places like this city, yeah, I say defund them. People need to take responsibility for themselves. They do. I understand cities are different. In this instance, it's because of the authoritarianism on the rise that I'm like, just abolish the police. Sheriffs are better, not perfect. We got to have some law enforcement. Okay, I get it. I just find it funny that you have skyrocketing crime in your city and you're like, we're going to defund the police. And I'm like, okay, you know what? Do it. I don't live there. Fine, whatever. The cops are enforcing edict anyway. Let's talk about what leads up to a recall effort, because these stories are just indications of what I believe is the collapse of California. California as a failed state. We have this. News 1. Homeless crisis takes center stage as recall election heats up. They say Angela's house will soon be a permanent housing complex in South LA that is dedicated to getting families with children off the streets. I mean, that sounds good. It does. Seeing the progress has filled Reverend Andy Bales with pride. Reverend Bales is CEO of Union Rescue Mission. He has dedicated the last 35 years of his life to the nonprofit's mission of solving homelessness. Reverend Bales said he can relate to voters who question why the problem of homelessness has ballooned despite billions being poured into programs, many of which are taxpayer funded. According to him, the government way is too expensive and inefficient. Homelessness is getting worse in California across the board. And it was bad when I was there. They referred to it as the homeless capital of the developed world. I guess that was kind of an insult to India to call them undeveloped because India has more homeless people. But they said, look, of, Western wealthy nations, LA, more homeless people than anywhere else. That's what they would say. I don't know if it's exactly true, but that's how they would phrase it. Homelessness, crime, political corruption. You look at Newsom going to these fancy restaurants, not wearing a mask, not caring. And people say it's time to recall. And then there are some things that I think aren't the fault of the politicians, but the responses, the emergency response is the fault of the government. We have this story from Mother Jones. Drought is complicating California's plans for a carbon-free future. It's hard to generate clean hydropower with so little water. That's true. Take a look at this image from the past drought. Lake Oroville, October 30th, 2014. The water levels dropped dramatically. Isn't that crazy? You ever see how it looks when you're in a lake and you wonder how deep it really is? Hey, that's what it looks like. Now, here's what's happening. California is facing another massive drought, and it's worse, my understanding, than it's been in the previous drought. There's now some bills that are going into effect that say, I believe by 2025, you will only be allowed to use 52 gallons per day. That's a lot of water to use. And, there are some videos saying you got to recall Newsom because of this. And I'm like, no. California is a failed state and collapsing, not just because of the government, but because of all of the people, who are entertaining these laws and don't understand what's happening. I get it. A lot of people say, Tim, overpopulation isn't true. Well, regional overpopulation certainly is a fact. You can't sustain a state when you have people taking long, hot showers during a massive drought, so they have to divert water from the farms to bring to the city, because that's what they do. Or when they drill down 5,000 feet to find groundwater, and then the houses in Tulare County have no water left. I'm sorry. That's a failed state. You have too many people guzzling too much water and voting to strip the water away from the people where the water is from. The farmers are like, hey, we need water to grow our crops. We provide a large portion of this economy for your well-being and taxes. And the city, having substantially more people, they all put it to a vote. And the larger, denser population votes to take the water away from the farms. And there you go. Failure. It doesn't work. There's too many people. Y'all need to spread out, diversify, stop hyper-concentrating in these massive urban sprawls, because it ain't working. And now we see another issue. Fires. From Reuters. Crews save California town near Lake Tahoe. Wildfire rages on. Again, I'm not going to blame California for a natural disaster, but the responses have been relatively bad. Now, as for the wildfire, this is a lot, it's very different relative to the droughts. The droughts, I can say, I've covered that story. Yeah, they're failing across the board. They're relying on, it's just not working, to put it bluntly. They get water from Colorado River. They're relying on desalination. These things are not long-term solutions. Too many people in hyper-concentrated areas voting for self-interest ultimately will not work. As for the wildfires, it just goes to show that California has problems that can't accommodate a lot of these houses, now these towns and these small houses, because of the rapid spread of wildfires, which are naturally occurring phenomenon. When a lot of brush and foliage and whatever falls to the ground and sweeps the forest floor, there is a lot of tinder material. When it gets really dry, fires start. The problem? Some of these wildfires are started because of the failures of the institutions in California. Notably, when a wildfire was started, because there was some power lines above ground and sparks went flying, or people driving in cars with chains dragging and then sparks, or people flicking cigarettes out of their cars. It is not just about the government. It is about the individual actions that are taking place that result in the chaos in California. But let's talk about the recall effort. Let's talk about what's happening, because people are upset. They're upset by what they're seeing, and they want change. Thus, Governor Gavin Newsom is facing a recall, and it's close. Some say it's within the margin of error. We're not entirely sure right now. Things could change. The latest from Politico. Newsom has strong support in latest California recall survey. With a strong majority of residents backing his handling of COVID-19 amid the Delta variant spread, California Governor Gavin Newsom enjoys support from a strong majority of likely voters who say they're voting against his recall, according to a new poll from the Public Policy Institute of California. The survey released Wednesday night showed that 58% of likely voters say they'll reject the recall, with just 39% voting yes. The margin is slightly larger than in two previous PPIC polls this year. With less than 2 weeks left until the September 14th election, the latest evidence that Democratic governor has gained breathing room in recent polls, according to a consolidated average by 538. Well, let's take a look and see where we're at. 538 says right now, there is a plus 8.4% lead for Gavin Newsom, with 52.1 saying keep Gavin Newsom and 43.7 saying remove Gavin Newsom. Of course, they also show that Larry Elder has a 23.5% of the polling if it was going to be someone other than Gavin Newsom. Now, this may be true, but I'm still not convinced. I think there's a strong possibility that Gavin Newsom does win. In fact, there's a lot of conservative and anti-establishment, new right personalities, whatever, who have said things like Newsom's not going to be recalled. But you got to go vote yes on it anyway. You've got to tell your friends. And if you're not doing the work right now, well, then you deserve Gavin Newsom. There's not a lot of conservatives in California. Well, I should put it this way. There's actually a lot of conservatives in California in a lot of different areas. Relative to the total population, not as much as you might think. But how many moderate people are there? How many regular people are there that don't like Newsom and don't like Trump? And you can go out and start telling them, hey, come vote. How about this? You got friends? Hey, they're getting their mail-in ballots. Why don't you tell them to fill it out? Do what the Democrats do. Encourage your friends to vote. That's one of the key issues of the 2020 election as to why the Democrats had the gains where they had them and they had losses where they had losses. But one of the main strategies of Democrats is with universal mail-in voting. It is incredibly easy to go to your friend and say, vote. And that's the secret. When you don't have mail-in voting, there's a lot of people who don't care. And you'll say, hey, you should vote. And they'll be like, does that mean I got to get up and go somewhere? Yes, I'm not doing it. But when the mail-in ballot's right there, they go, all right, whatever, I'll fill it out here. I'll vote. Okay. And then they'll go mail it in. Now, perhaps there's some ballot harvesting, or maybe it's just people going door to door and saying, did you fill out your mail-in ballot? You should fill it out right now and then mail it. They don't got to do anything other than that because it's right there in front of you. They made it extremely easy. And with the removal of that barrier, people who normally don't care now are like, okay, it's not that hard anymore. Now I'll vote. I don't think it's a good reason to vote. I think you need to know what your vote's about and know what you're voting for. But they've certainly made it easier. But they've made it easier for Republicans, too. The issue is Republicans don't have the organizational power to actually push people to go and vote. So Republicans got to learn this. You've got to start using the same tactics, going to your friends, asking what they voted, to ask your parents, ask your kids, ask your whoever. Or you can have activists go to door, encouraging people to register to vote and to vote. It's that simple, isn't it? People need to feel like there is a chance here. You need to give it your all. Otherwise, you know what? Well, then you'll deserve Gavin Newsom. Now, let's take a look at the polling data because the mail-in ballot data so far from political data. Because I'll tell you this, there's actually a lot of good news for people who want to see Gavin Newsom recalled. Even though they're saying the polls are favoring Gavin Newsom right now, I'm not convinced based on the recall ballot returned tracker from Political Data Inc. Right now, they say all ballots mailed out, 22,240,112. Returned, 23% have been returned. That's 5,054,661 with 17 million remaining. How many of those 17 million remaining are moderates, centrist Democrat types, and conservatives who would probably vote to recall if only you went out and talked to them and said, hey, are you guys going to vote? Now, the truth be told, you could go and tell someone to vote and they vote not to recall, and that could be bad. But the issue is that Democrats will go to areas where they know they're likely to vote Democrat. Republicans should go to areas where they know people are likely to support recall and encourage people to vote. Truth be told, I think we should just encourage people to vote and try and inform them. Just don't do any of the ballot harvesting stuff, all that illegal, whatever. Actually, I don't know. California might be illegal. I'm not sure. Figure out what your laws are. Make sure you're operating within the law and do your best to encourage people to engage in the civic process. Let's take a look at some of this data, which I think is really good news. Of the ballots mailed, 10.3 million went to Democrats, 6.5 went to independents, and 5.3 went to Republicans. That's very, very interesting. Of the ballots returned, 26% are Democrat, 17% are independent, and 23% are Republican. You can clearly see more ballots have been returned, 2.6 million Democrats, proportionally to independents or Republicans. Why? Independents and Republicans are more likely to vote in person. This is good news and bad news. The good news is it means that right now, Democrats have only 53% of the vote. Then you have independents at 22, Republicans at 24. There's no guarantee that all 53% of Democrats who voted to keep Gavin Newsom. Many of them who are more moderate may have actually said, nah, get rid of him. 3% maybe? I'm not so sure. Maybe not. Of the independent voters, how many are actually saying keep because they lean left? That may be the case. Let's do this. Let's take a look at civics polls. What do you have a favorable or unfavorable opinion of the Democratic Party? 61% says unfavorable, 28% says favorable, and 11% are unsure. If we just extrapolate from this and then go back to the data, we can say that about 2/3 of independents are in favor of a recall because they're more likely to dislike the Democrats. And about 21% will keep, Gavin Newsom. If that's the case, and Democrats are unified, right now, votes may be around 65% in favor of Gavin Newsom. But like I said, there's still some good news here. It is a disproportionate amount of votes for Democrats, and their lead is only 3%. Independents are underrepresented in this vote. Y'all need to get out, get active, and start telling people to go vote because independent voters haven't come out. But the good news, like I said, many of these voters are going to come out in person, and that's when the percentages will shift dramatically. If right now Democrats only have a 3% lead over independents and Republicans, that means very much so that come election day, there's going to be a surge of people voting to recall Gavin Newsom. Now, just because an independent favors the Democratic Party still doesn't mean that they favor Gavin Newsom. And they may want him out, even if it means Larry Elder, because they know Larry Elder is just one guy. He doesn't have the state legislatures. He doesn't have he's not a rep or anything like that. He's just one guy. Now, he can jam up a lot of Democratic agenda stuff. And so they may be thinking like, well, at least Gavin Newsom will agree to some of these things. Or they could be saying, look, Gavin Newsom is really, really bad. OK, and he's obstructing what we really want. At least with Larry Elder, it'll send a shock to the Democrats. Maybe we'll get that other guy who's trailing behind Larry Elder. Maybe the polls are wrong. Maybe we just got to get Gavin Newsom out. I don't know. I will give you my personal opinion is that I believe it is a higher probability that Gavin Newsom is not recalled, but there is a very good probability he is. In that event, it seems like Larry Elder will win. But this is just me basing my opinion off other people's data. I don't know for sure. You'd think after all of the insanity you've seen in California that they'd be like, I'm done with this. I don't care. I am done with this. But I'll tell you what, in the civics poll, we see it across the board. Democrats are overwhelmingly tribalist, overwhelmingly like the Democratic Party. And you know what's funny? Republicans hate the Republican Party. Let me see if I have the right poll here. Yeah. Do you have a favorable or unfavorable opinion of the Republican Party? Republicans only 64% of Republicans view the Republican Party favorably. Isn't that just sad? The Republican Party is trash. 17% of Republicans don't like the Republican Party and 20% are unsure. Larry Elder is something different, though. Larry Elder is something different. But I will warn you, my friends, there are many reasons other than statistics as to why I have the opinions I do. Let's throw it to our good friend, Colin Moriarty, who said, good news. I haven't lived in California since 2019, but I got a gubernatorial recall ballot sent to me in Virginia. And then he posts these images, which he has redacted information. You can see this official election mail from the county of Los Angeles, Mr. Colin Moriarty official ballot. And you can see here, September 14th, 2021, California gubernatorial recall election. All registered voters in LA County have been mailed a vote by mail ballot. Take a look at this. It says on the front, Virginia. How did California get his Virginia address? Why did they send him a ballot to Virginia? Yeah, I wonder what's going to happen in California. I wonder. Because if this is a mistake, I wonder how many mistakes have been made. LA sent a ballot to a Virginia address. How is that possible? How is there no fail-safe to say these ballots should not be sent out of state? And how many people might get these and be like, sure. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Now on this, you can see there's a lot of people listed. I don't think Larry Elder is listed on the front page, but there are a lot of people you could potentially vote for. Caitlyn Jenner, for instance. Let's see, who else is on this list? You can see this image. You got Caitlyn Jenner down there, that's for sure. Larry Elder isn't, I don't see him anywhere. There's another guy I don't see. Let's jump to the polling. It's Paffrath. So I'm not familiar with Paffrath. I know that Larry Elder's running. I know a few other people are running. There's a lot of people you may not be familiar with. And what you need to understand about the recall election is that you don't need a majority to win. If there's a recall, whoever gets the most votes becomes governor. And that could be Larry Elder, my friends. That could very much be Larry Elder. Now, I can't understand how people choose to live in these states. I got to be honest. I can't understand how they choose to remain with skyrocketing crime, with the violence prevention city official getting mugged on live TV. Well, I don't know if it was live, but they were mugged while doing a shoot with a news crew. While San Francisco decides that we're going to pay criminals, while criminals are running into stores taking whatever they want. I don't know how this persists. You'd think at some point people would say, I'm mad as hell, I'm not going to take it anymore. But you know what? You take a look at how the Democrats view the economy and they mostly view it as good. And that is wrong. There is no objective measure by which you can say the economy is doing well. Every day businesses shut down, more states shut down. People are saying their business is in decline in New York City because of the mandates. It's just getting slammed across the board with shortages, labor shortages, fuel price increases, food cost increases. By what metric can you possibly say the economy is doing well? They believe it because they watch CNN and they say, oh, you know, what Tim says is wrong and he's lying. And it's like, bro, I just read all of the news. I read as much as I can. California needs new leadership. And I don't think it matters who it is, to be completely honest. Even one of these other Democrats would probably be better, even though they wouldn't be as good as Larry Elder, because they'd probably just fall in line and support the party line. We need something to change. And we need to start calling out California more often. Rolling blackouts, the power outages, the drought, the chaos, the poo patrols. Yo, this is not a way for people to live. And unless or until people decide to say enough, California is a failed state, it'll happen. And it'll spread. And therein lies the other challenge. As more and more people leave California, the likelihood of this spreading to other places, these people bring these ideas with them. My respect to Joe Rogan, him moving to Texas is a good dude, and I think he's principled and won't vote for this. But what about the people who move to Austin to support his endeavors? The people that, when he does a comedy club, when more actors come out and they bring their support staff and they're all going to vote Democrat, they're all going to vote left, and they're going to change the landscape and vote for things that fail. Pay attention to what's happening around you. Sorry, Californians, man, but you better go out and vote for recall. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up tonight at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimcastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.